Hello, Ahorja. Welcome to Stories, Legends and Wonders of Árainn. Árainn is also known as Inis Mór, the largest of the three Aran Islands. I'm Dara Malloy, Dara O'Mailia Ascailge, and this is episode number 1, Gregory's Sound and a 7th century Pope. Céad Míle Fáilte. We're at the furthest end of Inis Mór, the southeast end, looking out at Meain and the waters that separate the two islands. These waters are called Gregory's Sound. It's always been called that, and people here, men, have been called Gregory after it. But Gregory's Sound gets its name from a pope who died in the very early part of the 7th century, Gregory I in Rome. And you have to ask, what on earth has he got to do with the waters between Meain and Inis Mór? And there's a story to that which I want to tell you. So Gregory I, when he died, this is the story, he asked that he be put into a casket and put floating down the river Tiber. And he prayed that the casket would take him to the holiest place in the world. And where did he land? He landed here on Inis Mór. The casket was washed up on this beach here, which is called Perth Dáwacha. Now that's the old name for it, Perth Dáwacha. We call it today Perth A, but originally, and you'll find it on the maps, is called Perth Dáwacha. And Perth Dáwacha means the port, or the beach if you like, the landing place of the casket. So this is where Pope Gregory ended up, and that's why the waters here are called after him, Gregory's Sound. Now also in the story, he was taken from there and buried, and he's buried up in Martin's Tower, which you see over here on the hillside. Martin's Tower was perhaps built by Martin. We don't know who Martin was. There's Martin's little Bohereen road going up to it as well, and people have had a look at the tower, and it looks like a solid structure of stone. So people didn't live in it or anything, but maybe it was built, well, people say it was built to bury Pope Gregory, but more practically speaking, it might have been built as a lookout tower at the very end of the island. Now, I want to tell you now about a possible reason why a story like this would have been recorded on Aran and survived all through the centuries as a story to be told around the fire. Because the connection in the story is the Benedictine rule, which you might have heard of. The Benedictine rule was the rule composed by Saint Benedict in the 5th century in Italy, Monte Cassino, to guide his monks. He never intended it to be a rule that would be used by lots of other monasteries. Anyway, it worked for his monks, and he died about 50 years before Pope Gregory. So in the time of Gregory, before he was Pope, he was a Roman senator. And at that time, the monastery of Monte Cassino was attacked by the Lombards. And the monks had to run away. And they came to Rome seeking refuge. And Gregory said, sure, come and build a new monastery for yourself on my land. Which is what they did. Now, to cut a long story short, Gregory himself joined that monastery, became a Benedictine monk, then became the abbot of the monk, and then was appointed Pope, or the Bishop of Rome, if you like, out of that monastery. Now, wind on a few more years, the monastery gets very big, lots and lots of monks in it, and Gregory decides he's going to take a group of those monks and send them to Britain to evangelize the Anglo-Saxons. So you're talking about 597 AD now. Augustine of Canterbury, the leader of that group of monks, arrives in Britain. They do great work converting the locals. They expand their own monastic communities, and they start building monastic communities everywhere across the south of England. Meanwhile, up the north in Scotland, the Iona community of monks, which are Celtic monks, are expanding their monastic activities southwards. So if you have one tide heading northwards, the Benedictines, and one tide heading southwards, the Celtic monks, there's going to be a meeting point at some stage, and that was the Synod of Whitby, where the dispute was around who's right, the Celtic monks or the Benedictine monks as to the date of Easter. And you may know that at that synod it was decided that the Benedictine monks were right and the Celtic monks were wrong. And that caused a sort of a setback for the Irish monks from then on. So if you wind that story forward now another little bit, the Pope understands that this Benedictine rule is very useful. He's actually turned it into what we call today a franchise. And once you have the rule, you can get a community of people to go and live by the rule. And so Benedictine monasticism begins to spread and spread all over Europe. But it's clashing all the time with the Celtic monks, who are also all over Europe. And so eventually Rome decides to impose the Benedictine rule on every monastery. And that wipes out the Celtic monasteries. So what I think is going on here is that the story is telling that while Celtic monasteries survived for a long time in Aran, they were eventually taken over by the Benedictines, who began to use their rule instead of the Celtic rule. Now, one more thing to tell you to finish the story. According to one legend, there was an Irish monk serving Pope Gregory in Rome for his last 10 years as Pope. And when Gregory died, people said, well, the Irish monk called Pupa, you can be the next Pope. And Pupa said, no thank you, I've done my service for the Pope, I want now to go back to Aran and live my life there as a monk. Which he did. He came back to Aran and he's buried in Killaney graveyard, which from then on was called Pupa's graveyard. Now it's not called that today, but up to recently enough it was called Pupa's grave. So that's another additional piece of the story to add to it about the monk Pupa, who was asked to be a pope in Rome and refused because he wanted to go back and live on the Aran Islands, which is where he's buried here today. If you'd like to get more into the story of Pope Gregory and the Celtic monks and the Benedictine rule and the wiping out of Celtic monasticism across Europe and eventually even in Ireland, then it's all contained in my book, The Globalization of God, Celtic Christianity's Nemesis. And if you're interested in these stories about Aran, this is the first one, but there'll be many, many more. You can find all these stories in my book called The Pocket Guide to Árainn, Legends in the Landscape. These two books are available on our website, ashlingpublications.com, and you'll find them on other platforms as well.